Okay, so in this deck profile, I'll be doing one for a Trickster deck with the focus on Jenibarbie. This is a deck requested by someone from one of the comment section in my other videos, so we'll be focusing on that for this part of the deck profile. So we'll just get right into it. There will be Jenibarbies, so we'll get to that when we get there, as there are certain cards I want to go over first. So we do have three Starship Captain Eds. So this is the SR from the third set. Even though this is a Trickster deck, we can play it because we can do the discount. And then one of the interesting things about Ed is that his discount is very different from the other SRs, whereas his ability to discount is actually to discard a card, which actually can be very helpful for discarding our Jenibarbie targets. So in case it gets stuck into our hands, as well as being able to use his ability when he comes to play just to deal 5 damage, as well as there'll be a few Wonderverse events that we can actually play off of his DR3. But it is important to know that you cannot use this for the Trickster ability because it is not a level 2 or less. Next we have one Masashi as one of our legends. Again, just a very good card for when it comes into play. You can just destroy any unit, and as well as having 3 strike. Then of course we have 4 Jenibarbies. The one different for this one, you don't really want to use Jenibarbie for the Trickster ability because the unit that you do summon will end up dying at the end of that turn, which will be the opponent's turn. But if there is some utility of the level 1s in our graveyard that we want to use, you could use it for the Trickster ability, but most of the time we'll actually be using her to summon herself, so that way she can summon another target. So it'll just be gaining advantage by summoning multiple units off of her ability. The next we have is the targets. So the first one is the Cuddlies, hollowbear. So when it's special summon, you can destroy a set card. So again, this is also just very good as a 2 strike, level 1. Next we have 4 of the murdercorn. So this is to destroy a level 0 or lower unit when it's special summoned from the graveyard. It also has 5 attack, which is very good clearing power, as it's like one of the main thresholds you want to hit for clearing other units. Next from the third set we're running is the 3 Biocorpse Monkinator. So this one is when you get directly attacked by your opponent's ruler, you can summon it or special it from your set zone. So this one you'll set, and because it's a special summon, you don't have to pay the cost for it. You can also play it if you want to from your set zone, because it does have 5 power, so it's very good for clearing units as well. But then when you special summon it, it essentially reduces your opponent's strike by 1, and against other decks like Wizard, it would actually put it to 1, because it reduces the strike by 1 rather than making it like a certain number. It also has the ability to destroy field cards when it's special summoned that way, which could be relevant against like Abyss decks, or even ones with Sky Strike Arrow, because it forces them to like use it, like maybe when you don't have targets that that they want to hit. And then lastly, we have 2 Biocorpse predabear. So this one is helpful for negating level 0 events. So this is a lot of like the shields up, or the ones that prevent damage type of abilities. You could run more, but again, this card is more dependent on the meta that you're playing in. So if you have like a lot of players that play with a lot of level 0 events, you could probably increase the number of this card, or you could even include the shark, the one that can negate level 1 or less touchdown or overdrive abilities. So again, it just depends on your meta, and your area of what people are playing that you would want to change it to. Next we have our second color that we're playing in, which is going to be red. For this one is saburo. So saburo has a once per turn ability that when you're dealt damage, you can ready him. So essentially he's like a double attacker. And especially since Trickster hits itself when it attacks, it essentially restand. If you really need to, you can also use his ability to try to get rid of your opponent's like better card. But a lot of times you'll be using him just as a double attacker because he is 5 power, so he has pretty good clearing abilities. Next we have 4 badfellas. So this is just helpful for keeping some of our crimenaut units alive from taking damage. So like if we have some in the defense zone like Jenibarbie or any of the other crimenaut units, if your opponent's going to try to get rid of it by attacking, they have to get rid of it essentially twice because badfellas can just eat up the damage. It is important to note that badfellas has been, it's not necessarily eroded, but his effect has been more clarified, where it specifically reduces damage. So it's similar to the Just a Flesh Wound, where it reduces the damage to 0, which, so because it's a reduced effect, means that it cannot reduce the effect of like Lucifer, whereas before, the way it's worded, you could potentially stop it from like taking lethal damage, and then it would you know, it essentially make it where it doesn't take it, but it's been reworded to say it's reduced. Which also means that it doesn't get around destruction effects. So if your opponent plays just destruction effects, he won't be able to trigger. But if your opponent does have to like attack through a unit, it's actually better for you because then you're able to use this. So like you could summon Jenibarbie, special him with Jenibarbie in the defense zone, and then you can use that as your opponent has to attack like twice, or they have to waste cards either like killing this first, as well as like your defense zone and unit in defense zone. Lastly, for units, we have 4 Joe. Joe is just a 5 power clearing that costs 0 in case you really need to get over any other units. Because a lot of the times the units are pretty low in power. They're like 5 to 4. Or like with Jenibarbie and badfellas, they're only 3. So sometimes they may not be able to clear like the bigger units that your opponents might place in the center. Something I also forgot to mention with Predabear, the reason why it is also pretty good is that he has another ability that when he's special summoned from the graveyard, he gets a +2 attack for the turn. So that way he can become a 6 clearing power. Now for our events, the first one we have is 1 Kami's Judgment, because again we are a trickster deck, so we can actually make use of the ability of just to destroy 1 enemy unit after we've taken an instance of 2 damage. And this is also our second legend for our deck. Next we have 4 Supernatural Citizens Act. So this is essentially just a heal. So again, when we take damage with Trickster, we can just use it to heal. For this one, is mostly going to be healing out any of our crimenaut targets for Jenibarbie, so that way we can revive them later on. Next, we have 4 hashtag Flashback Friday. So this one, you're fine for using, that you can use for Trickster for its ability, because it special summons, it does special it to your attack zone for any level 1 or less, but it doesn't kill it at the end of the turn. So if, like, say this is your opponent's last attack, you can use it so that we can leave up an attacker from it, and as well as get utility out of the unit itself. But if not, you can also play this on your turn as normal to like get like a Jenibarbie and then another unit as well, which is perfectly more than fine. But this is the one you would want to use over Jenibarbie for the Trickster's ability. And then next we have 3 Well of Ids. So then this card essentially lets us filter out again our level 1s or even our level 0 crimenaut units, and then just cycle them out so that way we can use them for Jenibarbie targets or for Flashback Friday. And it's important to know for Well of Id as well as Flashback Friday, these are the 2 targets for Ed that they can play them for free. So Ed being able to play Flashback Friday for free is essentially means that you get to fill up your whole field, because you could play Ed, use Flashback Friday, and get back a Jenibarbie, and then Jenibarbie gets back another unit as well. So you can fill up your whole field off of just playing Ed. But then Well of Id, again, can help us cycle our units, because the whole point is that we want the cards in our graveyard. So we want to try to make sure that we get them in, as well as this also has a chance to trigger some of our counter abilities, so like Jenibarbies themselves, or even other Flashback Fridays. And the last card we have is just 4 Shields Up. So because counter space is really limited, we don't have Space Cave in this deck, which is something I would normally play. But because of the different counter space that we are using, to support the Jenibarbie. We're going to be using 4 shields up as our main defense unit, as well as with Trickster. It only has two set zones. So even though we do have shields up, we also have a couple of the set abilities from the Biocorps. So we didn't want to overload too much on sets as well. So even though like something like shields up is very limited, it's just good to have as another defense form, because a lot of times the deck is very vulnerable, because the Jenibarbie as well as the hashtag Flashback Friday tends to special summon them into the attack position or into the attack zone. Sometimes your defense position is left open quite a bit, so that's why we use like shields up as like another target. If you want, there's also because you have Well of Ids, red is not so much needed, because red, the only thing it's taking advantage of is like the Saburo to restand, which is good, restand or good clearing power, as well as like the healing, as well as Kami's Judgment. You could also go yellow with this deck, instead, so you can include some, draw cards, or even use like the CNT level 2 Mortana, the one that lets you essentially DR to play events for cheaper, so that we could play like Flashback Friday, or like the draw spell, or even Well of Id for essentially pretty much free using DR for it. If you want to take like that route, but for this deck, I think like Saburo, the ability to attack multiple times, and then the healing from Supernatural Citizens Act is actually quite better than using like the yellow. But the yellow would give you like another access to a version of like shields up. But to me, that feels like smaller one, because I think this deck wants to be a little more aggressive than defensive, especially since Trickster does have a higher HP cap than other rulers. But that's all for this deck profile. The deck list for this deck will be in the description below. And then again, if there are any other types of decks you'd like to see, like if there are specific like rulers and specific like synergies you want to see, feel free to leave in the comments, and then I'll see what I can do about building different decks for them. But hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll be in 2022. And then hopefully we will start seeing some news for the 4th set, which supposedly is supposed to come out like at the end of January. But again, we'll see with news within the next couple weeks. But so until then, I'll still be doing a few deck profiles. But then as we get closer to release of the next set, I might hold off, because then it'll be like spoiler season. We're just looking up different cards for them. But again, thank you. That's all for this deck profile. And then again, if you have any questions, you can always put in the comment section below. And then thank you guys for watching. And then I'll see you guys in the next one.